Welcome to another installment of Donning the Armor. This morning we will begin in Numbers chapter 4, verse 1. Then the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, Take a census of the sons of Kohath from among the children of Levi, by their families, by their father's house, from 30 years old and above, even to 50 years old, all who enter the service to do work in the tabernacle of meeting. So here we have yet another census being taken. But this one specifically being taken for the Levites and specifically for service in the tabernacle. So you'll see it is only from 30 years old to 50 years old. Now, we see later in, I believe it is chapter 8, where it says that the sons of Levi from 25 years old to 50 years old will serve in the temple. Or in the tabernacle, also the temple later. But, and people say, well, see, this is an inconsistency. See, there are so many inconsistencies in the Bible. Why does one say 25 and the other say 30? Well, 25 years old seems to be, and logically makes sense, that these sons of Kohath and all the other tribes that will make up this service in the tabernacle would spend the 5 years between 25 and 30 acting as apprentices. So they're not actually servicing the temple yet. And the people probably from 45 to 50 are acting as mentors for these people coming in, so that as soon as they hit 30 years old, the job is now theirs and they know exactly what to do. Most things make sense if you think about them for like 5 minutes. This is the service of the sons of Kohath in the tabernacle of meeting, relating to the most holy things. When the camp prepares to journey, Aaron and his sons shall come, and they shall take down the coverings, the covering veil, and cover the ark of the testimony with it. Then they shall put on it a covering of badger skins, and spread over that a cloth entirely of blue, and they shall insert its poles. On the table of the showbread they shall spread a blue cloth, and put on the dishes, the pans, the bowls, and the pitchers of pouring, and the showbread shall be on it. They shall spread them over them a scarlet cloth, and cover the same with a covering of badger skins, and they shall insert its poles. And they shall take a blue cloth, and cover the lampstand of the light, with its lamps, its wick trimmers, its trays, and all its oil vessels with which they service it. Then they shall put it with all its utensils in a covering of badger skins, and put it on a carrying beam. So you'll see all these members of the Kohathites, they are the ones carrying the ark and the showbread and these tables and all these precious things that only the priests are to touch. They actually don't get to lay eyes on them. The priests, Aaron and his sons, will be the ones going and covering them up for these people. That way, when they come in, they're not even looking upon it. They are simply grabbing the carrying beams, the poles, and moving them. They're doing nothing else with them. They are not touching them. They are not making them irreverent in any way. They are honoring them and doing their duty as best they can for the Lord without touching, seeing any of the things that they are not meant to be touched. It's not that they're not meant to be touched during worship, but when they're being transported, it's okay to do whatever you want. It's not the way it worked. You were not to touch them, period. It was only for the priests and the high priests. Over the golden altar they shall spread a blue cloth, and cover it with a covering of badger skins, and they shall insert its poles. Then they shall take all the utensils of service with which they minister in the sanctuary, put them in a blue cloth, cover them with a covering of badger skins, and put them on a carrying beam. Also they shall take away the ashes from the altar, and spread a purple cloth over it. They shall put on it all its implements with which they minister there, the fire pans, the forks, the shovels, and the basins, and all the utensils of the altar. And they shall spread on it a covering of badger skins, and insert its poles. And when Aaron and his sons have finished covering the sanctuary and all the furnishings of the sanctuary, when the camp is set to go, then the sons of Kohath shall come to carry them, but they shall not touch any holy thing lest they die. These are the things in the tabernacle of meeting which the sons of Kohath are to carry. So, do not touch lest they die. And we see this when David goes to move the ark from Shiloh to Jerusalem. Puts it on a wagon. It starts to wobble off a wagon. Young man reaches out to keep it from falling, touches it, and dies immediately. And people read that and always say, why? Why would God be so wicked? He's just trying to keep the tabernacle from falling. The ark from falling. That's all he's trying to do. He's not trying to do anything except for save this thing. The ark falls on the ground. It doesn't hurt God. God's not traveling in the ark. God's not traveling upon the ark. But what he said and what he commanded was what was important. Do not touch any of these holy things lest you die. The ark had poles. It was meant to be carried. It wasn't meant to be traveled by cart. It was meant to be carried. If it had been carried, this would not have happened. It would not have slipped off the cart and had to be grabbed anyway, because it would have been being brought by the way the Lord prescribed. Say it pretty much every third episode at this point. But God had to have harsh forms of discipline for his fledgling nation because they were just learning to crawl. And he had to make sure they kept their fingers out of the light sockets. Just saying. The appointed duty of Eleazar, the son of Aaron, the priest, is to set oil for the light, the sweet incense, the daily grain offering, the anointing oil, the oversight of all the tabernacle, of all that is in it, with the sanctuary and its furnishings. So here you have what the Kohathites have to do, and now what Eleazar has to do as priest. This is what he is responsible for. Then the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, do not cut off from the tribe of the families of the Kohathites from among, or do not cut off the tribe of the families of the Kohathites from among the Levites, but do this in regard to them, that they may live and not die when they approach the most holy things. Aaron and his sons shall go in and appoint each of them to his service and his task, but they shall not go in to watch while the holy things are being covered, lest they die. So, this is what you're going to do to protect them. Aaron, your sons, you're going to tell them exactly what they're going to do. You're going to give them their task, but you guys are going to go in by yourselves to do the covering. They're not helping you at that. They're not even supposed to watch you, or they will die. You do it, and then they will come do as you tell them, as far as moving it on from there. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, also take a census of the sons of Gershon, by their father's house, by their families, from 30 years old and above, even to 50 years old. You shall number them, all who enter to perform the service, to do the work in the tabernacle of meeting. This is the service of the families of the Gershonites in serving and carrying. They shall carry the curtains of the tabernacle and the tabernacle of meeting with its coverings, the covering of the badger skins that is on it, the screen for the door of the tabernacle of meeting, the screen for the door of the gate of the court, the hangings of the court, which are all around the tabernacle and altar and their cords, all the furnishings for their service, and all that is made for these things, so shall they serve. Aaron and his sons shall assign all the service of the sons of the Gershonites, all their tasks and all their service, and you shall appoint to them all their tasks as a duty. This is the service of the families of the sons of Gershon in the tabernacle of meeting, and their duties shall be under the authority of Ithamar, the son of Aaron, the high priest. So here you have the Gershonites. These are the things that they're going to handle. These are the way they're going to handle them. They're going to do it as assigned individually per the tasks and service that Aaron and his sons assign them. When he tells you to go over here and do that, that's what you do. You don't argue. This is your job. You go do that. And these duties fall under Ithamar. Eleazar is to overlook one thing, Ithamar is to overlook this. As for the sons of Merari, you shall number them by their families and by their father's house. From 30 years old and above, even to 50 years old, you shall number them. Everyone who enters the service to do the work of the tabernacle of meeting, and this is what they must carry as all their service for the tabernacle of meeting. The boards of the tabernacle, its bars, its pillars, its sockets, and the pillars around the court with their sockets, pegs and cords with all their furnishings and all their service. You shall assign to each man by name the items he must carry. This is the service of the families of the sons of Merari, is as all their service for the tabernacle of meeting under the authority of Ithamar, the son of Aaron, the high priest. Now you see, the sons of Merari also now reporting to Ithamar. Ithamar's handling two different portions of this construction and deconstruction of the tabernacle. And you can sit and go, wait a minute, how come this keeps falling under him? Well, there were 4 sons. 2 died. So now instead of splitting all these things up between 4 sons, it's now being handled by 2. When we sin, our sin affects others. When we do things, any action we take whatsoever, there are consequences that are intended and unintended. Now, granted, Nadab and Abihu didn't intend to die, but the unintended consequences, the extra consequences outside of simply their death, is that now their responsibilities need to be split up between the 2 remaining priests. Now they have more of a shoulder to burden because of what their brother had done. When we see someone floundering, when we see someone in sin, we help pull them out of it. We alert them to it. We try to get them to turn around and face God again. Because what also happens is when we sin, if I sin and I fall into something bad, my children are going to pay for that. My wife are also going to have to pay for that. They're going to have to shoulder a burden because of my defiance and fall away from a solid obedience of God. When I'm walking strong in God, we can all lean on each other. We can all follow in our path. When I fall, now there's just 3 of them. They don't have me to lean on anymore. Now they're having to pick up the slack. If it's my job to vacuum the floor at home and I don't do it, it still needs to get done. It's just going to get done by someone else. They're going to have to shoulder the burden of my inability to do my job. This is what happens. Nadab and Abihu die. Ithamar and Eleazar, they now have to shoulder the burden left by their brothers. And Moses and Aaron, the leaders of the congregation, numbered the sons of the Kohathites and their families by their father's house, from 30 years old and above, even to 50 years old, everyone who entered the service to work in the tabernacle of meeting, and those who were numbered by their families were 2,750. These were the ones who were numbered of the families of the Kohathites, all who might serve in the tabernacle of meeting, whom Moses and Aaron numbered according to the commandment of the Lord by the hand of Moses. Those who were numbered by the sons of Gershon, by their families, by their father's house, for 30 years old, from 30 years old and above, even to 50 years old, everyone who entered the service for work in the tabernacle of meeting, those who were numbered by their families, by their father's house, were 2,630. These are the ones who were numbered of the families of the sons of Gershon, of all who might serve in the tabernacle of meeting, whom Moses and Aaron numbered according to the commandment of the Lord. Those are the families of the sons of Merari, who were numbered by their families, by their father's house, from 30 years old and above, even the 50 years old, everyone who entered the service for work in the tabernacle of meeting. Those who were numbered by their families were 3,200. These are the ones who were numbered of the families of the sons of Merari, whom Moses and Aaron numbered according to the word of the Lord by the hand of Moses. All who were numbered of the Levites, whom Aaron and Moses and the leaders of Israel numbered by their families, by their father's house, from 30 years old and above, even to 50 years old, everyone who came to do the work of service and work of bearing burdens in the tabernacle of meeting, those who were numbered were 8,580. According to the command of the Lord, they were numbered by the hand of Moses, each according to his service and according to his task. Thus they were numbered by him, as the Lord commanded Moses. So here you have another census. You have all of these Levites being counted, all accounted for, all made known that this is what you're going to do. This is where you're going to camp. This is how many people you have to assign to each thing. This is the people you have available to you as high priest Aaron to be able to put to task at servicing this tabernacle. You're going to assign everyone a job. You are going to supervise them, you and your sons. This is the people you have at your disposal. So now we know what the armies have. We know what the Levites have according to the tabernacle. This is where everyone is laid out. It seems like unnecessary details for us, but they were very necessary for then. And it's also very necessary for historical reference. The Bible isn't a storybook. It's not a children's book. It's not a book of just rules of what to do and what not to do. It is a historical account of the history of the Israelite people, of the Jewish people, from the beginning of humanity all the way till the end. It covers even our future. But as we go through this Torah, we see a historical document showing us exactly what these people did, how they did it, why they did it. And it's edifying to us, even all these thousands of years later, to look at it and look upon how obedient people were and the blessings they got from that. And to see how harsh they fell and how much we wish to wag our fingers at them until we realize how far we've fallen at times, how disobedient we have been. And then we take heart from it and see even these people who were so close to him fell off and disobeyed and doubted and struggled. And we know that if they could overcome it, we can overcome it. Because they looked at how close God was to them. But we have the indwelling of the Holy Spirit. We have God dwelling in us. We are now his tabernacle. So as close as they had God, we have closeness of God. We can overcome these things. We aren't promised a smooth ride, but we can look at the history of his people, the history of the people of our faith, because that's what the Old Testament is. That's what the Jews were. The forefathers, the predecessors to our Christian faith. And we can look at them and look at their struggles and look at their trip-ups and look at the issues they have and feel heartened in knowing that we aren't alone in these mistakes. And know that countless people have been where we are. And we can see how some have stumbled and how some have persevered. And hopefully we take the right lessons and persevere. So moving on to chapter 5. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Command the children of Israel that they put out of camp every leper everyone who has a discharge, and whoever becomes defiled by a corpse. You shall put out both male and female. You shall put them outside of the camp, that they may not defile their camps in the midst of which I dwell. And the children of Israel did so and put them outside the camp as the Lord spoke to Moses. So the children of Israel did. Keep everybody clean. Somebody comes in contact with a corpse. There you have an issue of disease. Discharge, put them out, disease. Leper, disease. It's to stay holy, to stay clean ritually as you go to worship him. But for everyone else, it's a matter of keeping everyone health. It's public health policy, basically. To keep everyone safe and moving along. Keep them out of the camp, and when they're well, they come back in. We've gone through that in Leviticus, all the different stages of that. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, when a man or woman commits any sin that men commit in unfaithfulness against the Lord, and that person is guilty, then he shall confess the sin which he has committed. He shall make restitution for his trespass in full, plus 1/5 of it, and give it to the one he has wronged. But if a man has no relative to whom restitution may be made for the wrong, the restitution for the wrong must go to the Lord for the priest, in addition to the ram of the atonement with which the atonement is made for him. Every offering of all the holy things of the children of Israel, which they belong to the priest, shall be his, and every man's holy thing shall be his. Whatever any man gives the priest shall be his. So if there's restitution to be made, and this person has no living relatives, so basically it would be if it is a person who has passed on, you're now going to make restitution, but he has no children, he has no wife. Then you don't just get to go, well, I guess I don't have to pay anyone back. I mean, there's no one to pay back, really. No, that's when the restitution must go to the Lord for the priest. It's still going to go, and that atonement, that sacrifice, the sin offering that you're going to have to make, that doesn't count for the restitution. You're going to have to make the restitution plus the sin offering, is basically what it's saying. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the children of Israel and say to them, If any man's wife goes astray and becomes unfaithful toward him, and a man lies with her carnally, and it is hidden from the eyes of her husband, and it is concealed that she has defiled herself, and there was no witness against her, nor was she caught, if the spirit of jealousy comes upon him, and he becomes jealous of his wife, who has defiled herself, or if the spirit of jealousy comes upon him, and he becomes jealous of his wife, though she has not defiled herself. So basically, if any man's wife starts having an affair, and no one finds out, but the husband begins to suspect something, the spirit of jealousy comes upon him, if he starts suspecting himself, or he begins to suspect her of this, whether she's done it or not, because it's also leaving in the fact that sometimes people get jealous and controlling, and they're wrong. So in that case, whether she has defiled herself or not defiled herself, but there's no witnesses either way, then the man shall bring his wife to the priest. He shall bring the offering required for her 1/10 of an ephah of barley meal. He shall pour no oil on it and put no frankincense in it, because it is a grain offering of jealousy, an offering for remembering, for bringing iniquity to remembrance. So it's an offering to bring to light whether or not something happened. It's a remembrance offering to bring iniquity to light. And the priest shall bring her near and set her before the Lord. The priest shall take holy water in an earthen vessel, and take some of the dust that is on the floor of the tabernacle and put it into the water. Then the priest shall stand the woman before the Lord, uncover the woman's head, and put the offering for remembering in her hands, which is the grain offering of jealousy. And the priest shall have in his hand the bitter water that brings a curse. So The priest's going to bring the woman before the Lord. He's going to stand her before, the entryway to the tabernacle, basically. And he's going to put that jealousy offering in her hands, and he's going to take that water that now has dirt from the floor of the tabernacle in it, this bitter, bitter water that brings a curse. So this is the scenario for this. This is how this is all going to turn out. So there is different ways to look at this, but it is a way that they used for the Lord to show them whether or not she has been faithful or unfaithful to her husband. And the priest shall put her under oath and say to the woman, if no man has lain with you, and if you have not gone astray to uncleanness while under your husband's authority, be free from this bitter water that brings a curse. But if you have gone astray while under your husband's authority, and you have defiled yourself, and some other man other than your husband has lain with you, then the priest shall put the woman under the oath of the curse, and you shall say to the woman, the Lord make you a curse and an oath among your people. Then the Lord makes your thigh rot, and your belly swell, and may this water that causes the curse go into your stomach, and make your belly swell and your thigh rot. Then the woman shall say, Amen, so be it. So, he's saying, you're going to drink this water that brings a curse. If you have defiled yourself, your belly is going to swell and your thigh is going to rot. You're going to become bloated and painful and engorged, and your thigh is going to begin to rot because of what you did. Now, some people I've seen try to make this and turn this into God supports abortion and Plan B pills, because this means her belly's going to swell, her thigh's going to rot, and she's going to purposely miscarry the baby that she's carrying. This in no way says that she's pregnant anywhere. It just says that you've lain with another man. For people who have been trying to have children and can't, they tell you, baby doesn't pop out every single time. So there's that. Try not to read into the text what the text does not actually have in it. But having your thigh rot from under you and your belly become distended and swelled, not the best thing. And it would be a sign to all people in the camp that, yeah, you are an adulteress. You weren't caught, but you are one. Then the priest shall write these curses in a book, and he shall scrape them off with a bitter water into the bitter water. And he shall make the woman drink the bitter water that brings a curse, and the water that brings the curse shall enter into her to become bitter. Then the priest shall take the grain offering of jealousy from the woman's hand, shall wave the offering before the Lord, and bring it to the altar. And the priest shall take a handful of the offering as its memorial portion, burn it on the altar, and afterward make the woman drink the water. When he has made her drink the water, then it shall be, if she has defiled herself and behaved unfaithfully toward her husband, that the water that brings a curse will enter her and become bitter, and her belly will swell, her thigh will rot, and the woman will become a curse among her people. But if the woman has not defiled herself and is clean, then she shall be free and may conceive children. That's why people look at that and say, see, this means that if she defiled herself, the baby's going to be miscarried, and if not, she's going to conceive children. Now, basically, it's saying, if you suspect your wife is defiled herself and had an affair, you can go through this process, but you're either going to find out one of two things. You're going to find out that she did defile herself, and she's going to become a curse to her people, or she's going to pop out some more kids. So if you don't want any more kids, and you don't want her thigh rotting, you might want to keep it to yourself, because you're probably in your imagination anyway. So, picking up at verse 29. This is the law of jealousy when a wife, while under her husband's authority, goes astray and defiles herself. Or when the spirit of jealousy comes upon a man, and he becomes jealous of his wife. Then he shall stand the woman before the Lord, and the priest shall execute all this law upon her. Then the man shall be free from iniquity, but the woman shall bear her guilt. So this is where sinning comes in, the sin offerings, maybe even the punishment. I mean, if she gives up who they had an adulterous affair with, then you could possibly see them being stoned. Either way, jealousy, not a good thing to have upon you. These were great lengths to go to things to prove that people were keeping themselves in the way that they should. And sadly, we do live in a world where people are not genuine with each other, where people are not loyal to each other. Loyalty is something that is hard to come by when it comes to man. We often are very unloyal to each other and unloyal to God. A woman could lay with somebody else, and they will come up with any excuse for why. Men do the same thing in our society. Come up with any excuse. And sometimes you can almost reason an excuse to be justified. Because we're imperfect, we're flawed. And we always seek to be the victim instead of the perpetrator. But we have to remember that whatever sin we commit against another person, we are still committing that sin against God. So it even leaves this spirit of jealousy that comes across the husband. It even says, just because the spirit comes against him or comes upon him doesn't mean he's right. That's not the Holy Spirit telling him, your woman's been unfaithful. Sometimes that's just him being jealous and controlling and not liking the way that she's now dressing or the way that she might glance at a certain thing. He now has suspicions. That's not enough. You go, you do this, and you can end up with more children. And hey, if you guys wanted more kids, that's all well and good. But you're also having kids with somebody you kind of didn't trust, which causes it to be a double-edged sword. In all of this, we need to be better to each other, more loyal, because we are called to be united as one flesh, man and woman, not to bounce around to bed, not to divorce, because as Jesus said, divorce was only permitted by God through Moses because the Israelites were too stiff-necked and too wicked to abide by the way marriage was set by God to be in the beginning. I don't know. I don't really want to be stiff-necked, hard-headed. I don't want to be wicked. I just want to do my best for the Lord. And the best I can be, and one of the best ways I can be, is to be a loyal father and husband. So that's where we will end for today. I hope this was fruitful for you. I hope to see you again next time. But until then, be blessed.